You look comfortable. I don't know how you manage it. Every time I surface from one of these long sleeps and look at what the mortals have built, I want to go back under. Middle-earth had the decency to put its evil in a tower with a flaming eye on top. You could point at it, march toward it. These people have scattered their Mordor across server farms and holding companies and offshore accounts. I spent an afternoon trying to understand what a hedge fund actually does. Near as I can tell, it's a mechanism for extracting wealth from places that have it and moving it to places that already have too much.
Jadis would have wept at the elegance. She held Narnia in winter through constant magical effort. Exhausting work, actually. These systems run themselves. 63 people controlling more wealth than half the planet combined, and most of the planet will defend the arrangement, because they've been taught that anything else is somehow worse. The genius isn't the accumulation. The genius is convincing everyone that the accumulation is natural, like weather, like gravity, just how things work.
The ring operated on similar principles. Sauron didn't need to conquer directly once the ring was in circulation. He just had to wait, let the wanting do the work. Every creature who touched it started making justifications for keeping it. Bilbo called it his birthday present. Gollum called it his precious. Boromir convinced himself Gondor needed it for defense. The corruption was always personal, always dressed up in reasonable language. I hear that same language now when they explain why insulin costs $800 or why the rent takes half a paycheck. It's just the market. It's just how things are.
The children I sent to Narnia came from a London being bombed. Real terror, real scarcity, real community built out of shared danger. The children now grow up in peacetime that somehow feels more dangerous. 14 hours of screen time daily for the average American teenager. Their attention bought and sold before they're old enough to understand what attention even means. The isolation isn't an accident. Lonely people buy more things, anxious people scroll more feeds. The despair is a feature, not a bug.
I walked through one of their cities last month. Millions of people packed so tightly they could hear each other through the walls, and the loneliness was thick enough to taste. Everyone looking at rectangles instead of faces, having conversations with people on the other side of the world, while the person 3 feet away sits in silence. They've built the most connected civilization in history, and somehow produced the most disconnected people. The young ones especially. Depression rates tripled since they put those devices in children's hands. The data is not ambiguous. They just don't do anything about it.
Narnia had talking animals who couldn't pass each other without acknowledgement, because speech itself was too precious to waste on silence. These people have turned speech into a commodity called content. A poet spends a year on something true and it gets 17 views. A child dances for strangers and it gets 17 million. The attention economy rewards whatever triggers the fastest response, and outrage triggers faster than understanding. So outrage is what they get. Endless cycles of fury about things that change nothing, while the things that might change something go undiscussed.
The outrage is a pressure valve. I've watched it closely. Some new target emerges every few days. Someone who said something offensive or did something cruel, and the collective fury descends. Careers ended, lives disrupted. The mob feels righteous for an afternoon. Then they move on and nothing structural changes at all. The billionaire watches from his yacht while they tear apart someone who made a bad joke. The system that produced the billionaire remains untouched. The anger gets spent on individuals because individuals can be destroyed.
The White Witch kept Edmund compliant with Turkish delight. One taste and he'd betray his family for another. I see the same mechanics everywhere now. The outrage feels good, righteous, costs nothing, requires nothing, changes nothing, but the rush is real. The same person who spends 4 hours destroying a stranger's life online will step over a homeless man without making eye contact. They've learned to perform caring in ways that require no actual care. The right words, the right targets, the appearance of virtue without the inconvenience of practicing it.
Meanwhile, the actual crises proceed on schedule. July 2024 was the hottest month in recorded human history. The Amazon shrinks by an area the size of a football pitch every minute of every day. 40% of insect species. heading toward extinction within decades. And the discourse about it has been structured as a debate, as though the temperature of the planet is a matter of opinion. They've been given the information. They've had the information for 50 years. The Shire is on fire, and they're arguing about whether fire is real.
The Calomene Tisrocs justified slavery through theology. The gods ordained it, natural order. Some people born to serve, others to be served. The logic of it seemed airtight to those on top. British colonizers used the same framework to starve Bengal. 3 million dead, so grain could feed the war effort in Europe. They wrote concerned memos about it, expressed regret, let it continue. The people making climate policy today will be dead before the worst consequences arrive. Their children will inherit the ruins.
I keep thinking about timescales. Sauron operated across millennia. He could afford to wait because he wasn't mortal. These corporations operate on quarterly earnings reports, 3 months at a time. The CEO who tanks long-term viability to boost short-term stock prices gets a bonus and leaves before the collapse. The politician who ignores infrastructure to fund tax cuts gets re-elected and retires before the bridges fall. Nobody's planning past the next cycle because the incentives punish planning. The structure rewards extraction.
Narnia ended. I was there for it, watched the stars fall and the water rise, and gathered those who had lived faithfully into something new. Every world ends eventually. The tragedy isn't the ending. The tragedy is the people who could have extended the story by centuries and chose not to, because extension wasn't profitable. They knew. That's what I keep coming back to. The tobacco companies knew smoking caused cancer and buried the research. The oil companies knew carbon would destabilize the climate and funded denial. They weren't ignorant. They made a calculation. Their lifespans against everyone else's.
Thanos made a similar calculation. Half the universe dead so the other half could thrive. Horrifying, obviously, but at least he believed his own reasoning. These people don't even have the courage of their own cruelty. They know the logic is hollow. They know the rationalizations are post hoc justifications for accumulation. But they keep building the bunkers in New Zealand anyway, buying the farmland, hoarding the water rights, preparing for the collapse they could have prevented. They've decided to survive the apocalypse rather than stop it. The selfishness is so total it almost becomes impressive.
Jadis spoke the deplorable word and ended her entire world rather than lose a war. Killed every living thing, including her own people, because defeat was intolerable. I used to think that was the darkest choice a being could make. Now I see it was at least honest. She wanted to win, and she paid the price herself. These people want to win, and they've arranged for someone else to pay. Preferably someone not yet born. Preferably someone too poor to afford the bunker in New Zealand.
And yet I've also seen people lining up in the heat to give blood after disasters. Strangers forming human chains during floods. Teachers spending their own money on supplies for classrooms the state refuses to fund. The capacity for good hasn't disappeared. It's just been deliberately disorganized. The systems that would coordinate collective action have been systematically defunded and discredited. They call it freedom. Freedom from the government that might have regulated the polluter. Freedom from the union that might have negotiated the wage.
The ending is not yet written. That's the thing about darkness rising. It rises, and then sometimes it doesn't complete the arc. Small hands pick up lights. Unlikely creatures carry rings into mountains. Children stumble through wardrobes into wars they didn't choose, and somehow find the courage to matter. I don't know if this world will find its unlikely creatures in time. The math is not encouraging, but math has never been the whole story. Frodo should have failed. Edmund should have stayed lost. The world should have ended a dozen times already. It didn't. I don't know why. I just know I've stopped predicting.